Amara Okoro had always loved her family, even when life in Lagos wasn't easy. She had worked hard, building her little business from scratch, often sacrificing her own comfort to help out at home. So when the news broke one sunny afternoon that her parents, Chike and Ijeoma Okoro, had won $10 million in the lottery, she expected laughter, hugs, and maybe even a small celebration. She never expected what came next. Instead of joy, there was coldness. Her parents sat stiffly, almost avoiding eye contact, as they told her she had never done enough for the family. Amara blinked, unsure she'd heard correctly. $10 million, and they were blaming her? She tried to reason, to remind them of the sacrifices she had made, but her words fell flat. Chike's voice rose, accusing her of being selfish, while Ijeoma's eyes burned with anger. Before she could even respond, they handed her a small bag of clothes and told her to leave. "This house isn't for someone who doesn't care about the family," her father said, cold and final. The world seemed to tilt. Humiliation washed over her, mingled with disbelief and shock. How could the people she trusted most, her own parents, turn on her at the very moment they had everything? Walking out of the house, Amara felt a mix of heartbreak and rage, her mind spinning. That day, she realized she couldn't rely on anyone, not even family, and if she wanted respect and security, she would have to claim it herself. Amara stepped out of her parents' house with nothing but a small bag of clothes and a head full of confusion. Lagos streets, which she had always known, suddenly felt colder and sharper. She had no apartment, no steady income, and no family to turn to. It was one thing to dream big when she had the comfort of her parents' home behind her, and another to actually face the world alone. The first few days were the hardest. She wandered through neighborhoods, checking small apartments that were either too expensive or falling apart. She stayed in a tiny flat that smelled of damp walls, with a leaking roof that she patched herself with old newspapers. Each night, lying on the thin mattress, she remembered how she had always been the responsible child, handling bills, helping her younger cousins with schoolwork, and even supporting her parents whenever they needed money. And yet, here she was, abandoned and blamed for being selfish. The injustice stung, but it also lit a fire in her chest. Money was tight. She took odd jobs wherever she could find them, waiting tables, doing freelance graphic design for small shops, delivering packages on a bicycle under the scorching sun. Some days, she earned barely enough to eat, but she refused to give up. Amara discovered a strange satisfaction in small victory, getting a client to smile at her design, finally fixing a stubborn leak in her flat, or stretching her little budget to cover a week's groceries. Each tiny win reminded her of her own worth, separate from the opinions of her parents. Even in these struggles, she refused to let bitterness consume her. She reminded herself constantly that her ambition was her shield. While her parents squandered their lottery winnings, she began quietly planning her comeback, sketching ideas for a small business, researching markets, and learning new skills online late into the night. She learned to rely on her own talents, her own perseverance. Lagos was chaotic, overwhelming, and sometimes cruel, but Amara began to see that it was also full of opportunities for someone willing to fight. Every early setback became a lesson. Every harsh word from a client or failed job sharpened her resilience. Slowly, day by day, she started to build a rhythm, a life that was entirely hers, earned with sweat, intelligence, and unwavering determination. By the end of that first year, Amara realized something powerful. She might have been abandoned, underestimated, and hurt, but she was not defeated. The seed of grit planted in those difficult months began to take root. She was learning to survive, yes, but more importantly, she was learning to thrive on her own terms. The Lagos skyline, which had once felt intimidating, now felt like a place where she could finally carve out her empire, step by determined step. After a year of surviving on odd jobs and tiny victories, Amara decided it was time to stop just getting by. She had skills, ideas, and a vision for something bigger, something that could finally give her the independence and respect she deserved. She started small, launching a tech consultancy from the corner of her cramped flat. Her goal was simple: help local businesses in Lagos go digital, streamline their operations, and grow in a world that was rapidly moving online. The beginning was tough. Clients were skeptical, budgets were tight, and Amara often worked long hours without a break. But she had something her parents had never taught her: persistence. Slowly, her first few clients began to see results. Inventory systems that no longer caused chaos, small e-commerce websites that actually sold products, social media pages that brought in customers. Word of mouth spread, and with it came more opportunities. Amara didn't just want to grow her business. She wanted to do it the right way. She hired a small, loyal team of young professionals who shared her drive and integrity. Together, they brainstormed solutions, solved problems creatively, and celebrated every little win. Even when a project failed or a client threatened to leave, Amara remained calm, learning from the mistakes rather than giving up. She had learned the hard way that success built on patience and ethics lasts far longer than shortcuts or luck. Over the next 5 years, her business grew steadily. There were mornings when she arrived at her office before sunrise, evenings when she left past midnight, and weekends spent negotiating deals or mentoring her team. There were setbacks too, clients who disappeared, unexpected tech issues, and fierce competition. But each challenge only made her sharper, smarter, and more determined. Her reputation as someone reliable, intelligent, and fair began to spread across Lagos and eventually beyond. Through it all, Amara never forgot why she started. Every new partnership, every client success, every small contract one felt like a step toward proving something, not just to her parents, but to herself. She was building more than a company. She was building her own legacy, one grounded in talent, perseverance, and unwavering ethics. By the 5th year, her modest startup had transformed into a thriving enterprise. Amara now managed multiple clients, owned her own office space in the heart of Lagos, and employed a team she trusted like family. She had turned her dreams into reality through sheer willpower, intelligence, and determination. And deep down, she felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had created all of this on her own, without relying on anyone who had ever doubted or abandoned her. Even as Amara built her life and business from the ground up, the shadow of her parents' greed loomed over her in the most frustrating ways. Through social media, WhatsApp forwards, and occasional gossip from mutual friends, she saw Chike and Ijeoma living a life of excess. Luxury cars lined their driveway like a showroom, private jets and first-class trips were casually flaunted online, and designer outfits made headlines in their social circle. It was obvious, they had everything money could buy. And yet, when it came to Amara, the daughter who had once sacrificed for them, they offered nothing. No acknowledgement of her achievements, no apologies for the humiliation they had caused, and certainly no support as she struggled to carve out her own path. Each post, each photo, each boastful story felt like salt in a still healing wound. Amara's anger bubbled beneath the surface, not just at their audacity, but at the realization that she had given them no power over her anymore. Instead of letting it consume her, Amara turned that frustration into clarity. She started to watch carefully, noting their habits, their networks, and their weaknesses. She realized that while they had money, they had little discipline, no real work ethic, and no understanding of what it meant to build something lasting. Meanwhile, she had her business, her team, and a growing reputation, things they could never touch. Amara also strengthened her own security. She made sure her finances were solid, her investments protected, and her business insulated from any interference. She wasn't about to be blindsided or manipulated by the people who had once kicked her out. Every contract she signed, every partnership she built, was layered with caution, and every decision reinforced her independence. At the same time, Amara allowed herself a small, private satisfaction. Seeing her parents flaunt their wealth while remaining shallow and irresponsible only strengthened her resolve. She didn't want revenge. She wanted justice through life itself, through her own achievements and the undeniable proof that she could rise higher than those who had doubted her. And so, beneath the anger, a plan began to form. Amara wasn't going to react impulsively. She would wait for the right moment, a time when the balance of power had shifted completely. For now, she focused on growth, security, and the quiet, fierce determination that had carried her this far. While her parents wasted millions, she was building an empire they could never buy, and deep down, that knowledge gave her a sense of power and peace that no flashy car or exotic trip ever could. 5 years had passed since Amara was kicked out of her parents' house, and in that time, she had built a life she could be proud of. Her tech consultancy was no longer a small startup in a cramped Lagos flat. It was a thriving company with international clients, a loyal team, and a growing reputation for integrity and results. The office buzzed with activity, and Amara moved through it with quiet confidence, her mind focused on the next project, the next growth opportunity. Then, one afternoon, everything paused. The office door swung open, and there they were, Chike and Ijeoma, her parents. They looked different than she remembered, disheveled, worn down, and desperate. Their designer clothes were wrinkled, their usually polished smiles replaced by anxious frowns. For a moment, Amara simply stared, processing the sight. After years of seeing them flaunt wealth on social media, seeing them like this was almost surreal. We need your help, Amara," her father began, his voice trembling. We lost everything. Bad investments. Everything's gone. Please, can you help us?" Her mother's eyes glistened with what might have been tears, or perhaps the last traces of pride breaking apart. "We don't know what else to do," Ijeoma whispered. "You're our daughter. You have to help us." Amara felt a rush of emotions, shock, anger, disbelief, but none of it showed on her face. She remained calm, poised, and most importantly, in control. Her parents' panic, their sudden vulnerability, only highlighted the years of neglect, humiliation, and betrayal she had endured. She remembered every harsh word, every accusation, every moment they had dismissed her, belittled her, or pushed her out of their lives. For a brief moment, she let the silence speak for her. The contrast was striking, her calm, collected presence against their frantic desperation. She was no longer the scared, dependent child who had left their house with nothing. She was the woman who had fought tooth and nail, who had built her empire from scratch, and who now had the power to decide how, or even if, they would be helped. She walked slowly toward them, letting them squirm under the weight of her gaze. "You lost everything?" she said softly, almost conversationally. "And now you think you can just walk in and ask for help?" Chike opened his mouth, but no words came out. Ijeoma looked down, ashamed, fidgeting with her hand. Amara's heart beat steadily, a mix of satisfaction and caution. She knew this moment was her chance to assert herself, to show that respect and accountability were earned, not demanded. And in that office, with her parents standing before her in desperation, Amara felt the first real taste of power in years, the power to write the next chapter of her story on her own terms. Amara didn't answer right away. She stood in her office, arms crossed, eyes steady on her parents, letting the silence stretch. Chike fidgeted, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, while Ijeoma avoided her gaze entirely. Their desperation was palpable, but Amara knew better than to let emotion rush her decision. She had learned the hard way that words spoken too soon could give power to the undeserving. "Why should I help you now?" she asked finally, her voice calm but firm. "After everything you've done?" The question hung in the air like a storm cloud. Immediately, memories flashed in Amara's mind. The times her parents had favored her younger cousins while ignoring her achievements. The nights she spent quietly paying bills to keep the household running. The humiliation of being blamed for not doing enough on the very day they had won millions. She remembered their cold laughter, the doors slammed in her face, and the feeling of being invisible in the home she had loved so deeply. Her parents stammered, trying to explain, fumbling for excuses. Chike muttered something about mistakes and bad luck, while Ijeoma's voice cracked as she claimed they never meant to hurt her. But Amara could see through it all. This was not the genuine remorse she had hoped for. It was desperation dressed up as apology. She let them squirm. Every glance, every pause, every fumbled word reminded them, and reminded herself, of the power shift that had taken place. For years, they had held the upper hand, dictating her life and belittling her. Now the tables had turned. Amara didn't need to yell or punish. Her quiet authority was enough. The imbalance of respect and control was theirs to reckon with. Amara leaned against her desk, her mind sharp and focused. She wanted to see if they were capable of accountability, of understanding what respect really meant. Could they admit their faults? Could they work to earn her trust instead of demanding her assistance? The room was thick with tension. Every second stretched, each word from her parents faltering, hesitant. And in that silence, Amara felt a strange satisfaction. Not vengeance, not joy, but the deep, unshakable feeling of someone who had survived, grown, and finally held the reins of power in a situation that once made her powerless. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Their fear, discomfort, and guilt were proof that the child they had wronged had become a woman who could choose her own boundaries, who could demand respect before extending help. Amara's mind was clear. She would teach a lesson, but she would do it with patience, intelligence, and a strength they had never seen coming. Amara let them stew in their discomfort for a moment longer. Then she began to speak, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "You want my help?" she said, leaning slightly against her desk. "Let's be honest. This isn't about your mistakes or your losses. It's about what you think you deserve." Chike opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. "Don't speak yet. Listen." Slowly, deliberately, Amara shared pieces of her journey, enough to make them realize how far she had come. She spoke about the early days of her tech consultancy, the sleepless nights coding and negotiating contracts, the tiny apartment she had transformed into a hub for her growing team. She described the partnerships she had built, the clients she had won, and the reputation she had earned across Lagos and beyond. "And while you were flaunting money you hadn't even earned, I was building something real," she said, her eyes meeting theirs, steady and unwavering. "Something that lasts. Something that can't be taken away by luck or bad choices." Amara didn't need to list exact figures, but the implications were clear. She owned her company, controlled her investments, and had built a multi-million-dollar enterprise from scratch. Every word she spoke made Chike and Ijeoma shrink in their seats. Their faces drained of color as humiliation replaced their earlier confidence. They had imagined themselves in control, still entitled to her help, still the powerful parents. But the truth was undeniable. They had nothing she couldn't do without, while she had everything they could only dream of. You see, Amara continued, success isn't automatic. It isn't inherited, and it isn't given just because you were my parents. It's earned, and I earned every bit of what I have through intelligence, hard work, and integrity. Not through a lottery ticket or empty promises. Her calm, measured tone made the message sting even more. Every glance they exchanged was a silent acknowledgement that they had underestimated her, ignored her, and mistreated her. And now, 5 years later, they were powerless to claim what was rightfully. Amara straightened, a small, controlled smile touching her lips. I will always care about you as my parents, but you are not automatically entitled to my life, my work, or my success. That respect, that trust, has to be earned, just like everything else in life. For the first time in decades, Chaik and Ijeoma understood the true weight of their actions. The parents who once dismissed, humiliated, and abandoned her were now humbled and silent, confronted by the woman they had tried to control, and the undeniable fact that she had risen far above them. In that office, the power shift was complete. Amara wasn't just standing in front of them as their daughter. She was standing as an equal, as someone who had transformed adversity into triumph. And from that moment, they had no choice but to acknowledge the woman she had become. Amara paused, letting her parents absorb the weight of her words. She could have turned them away completely, left them to figure out their own mess, and walked away without a second thought. But she decided on a different kind of justice, one that would teach them accountability without cruelty. I'm willing to help, she said slowly, but on one condition. You have to earn it. Chaik and Ijeoma blinked in disbelief. Earn it, Chaik repeated, his voice shaky. What do you mean? Amara's eyes were steady, unwavering. You will work with me at my company. You will follow instructions, complete tasks, and prove that you are capable of responsibility. Only then will I consider offering any financial assistance. This isn't a punishment, it's a lesson. A chance to show that success and respect must be earned, not demanded. The parents exchanged hesitant glances. Pride and fear battled across their faces. They had spent years living off luck and privilege, never imagining a world where they might be at someone else's mercy. But Amara's calm authority left no room for argument. Reluctantly, they agreed, humbled and shamed, their heads bowed as they stepped into her office as workers, not entitled lottery winners. The next days were an eye-opener for them. Amara assigned simple, everyday office tasks, organizing files, answering client emails, sorting invoices. At first, they fumbled clumsily, forgetting instructions and grumbling under their breath. The humiliation of performing mundane work in a world they had always imagined belonged to them was palpable. Meanwhile, Amara watched quietly, correcting where needed, but never raising her voice, never mocking. Her satisfaction was quiet and complete. Day by day, the parents learned what it meant to contribute, to take responsibility, and to respect someone else's authority. They discovered the value of effort, the patience required to complete tasks properly, and the stark contrast between living off luck and building something meaningful. Amara's gentle but firm guidance reminded them of the lessons they had never taught her, lessons they now had to learn the hard way. For Amara, this reversal of roles was deeply satisfying. Karma had its way, not through vengeance, but through natural consequences. She didn't need to punish them violently. Life itself had humbled them, and she had provided the structure for them to recognize their failing. Every clumsy task they completed, every moment of hesitation and correction, reinforced the power shift she had fought so hard to achieve. In those quiet office hours, the parents began to understand the true meaning of accountability. And Amara? She felt a sense of calm triumph. Justice had been served not with anger, but with patience, wisdom, and the undeniable truth that actions, good or bad, always have consequences. After watching her parents learn the hard way, Amara decided it was time to share her story, but not in a way that exposed them directly. She wanted to inspire, not humiliate. Sitting late one night in her office, she wrote a candid post on a popular business blog, detailing her journey, the betrayal, the struggle, and the rise from nothing to a multi-million-dollar enterprise. She told the story honestly, openly, and with heart, leaving out names but keeping the lessons raw and powerful. Within hours, the post started to gain traction. Readers related to her honesty and resilience. Young African professionals shared the article, adding their own comments about dreams, struggles, and the challenges of navigating family expectations. Social media picked up the story. Hashtags like #AmaraWins and #FamilyGreed trending began to circulate across Nigeria, sparking conversations about responsibility, respect, and self-worth. Her journey resonated with people in every industry, from tech to fashion to finance. Amara watched the responses grow with a quiet sense of satisfaction. Messages poured in. Your story gave me hope. I'm starting my own business because of this. Thank you for showing what true perseverance looks like. The global recognition didn't matter for vanity. It mattered because it validated her hard work and reinforced her self-respect. Every like, share, and comment was a reminder that her life and achievements were hers alone, earned through determination, integrity, and courage. Meanwhile, news of her success and the viral post eventually reached her parents. Chaik and Ijeoma, once arrogant and careless, now faced the public contrast of their own wasted wealth and their daughter's hard-earned empire. They saw the admiration and respect she commanded worldwide, a respect they could never take for themselves. And though they had learned lessons privately, the public recognition cemented the truth. Amara had risen above betrayal, humiliation, and greed, and no lottery ticket could ever rival the life she had built. In quiet moments, Amara reflected on the irony. Those who had thought they held power over her now watched from the sidelines as she thrived, admired by thousands. She didn't need approval. She didn't need validation from them. Her success spoke for itself. The story of her perseverance, humility, and intelligence became a symbol, not just of personal victory, but of what's possible when someone refuses to let family betrayal define them. Through her anonymous post and social media presence, Amara became more than just a successful entrepreneur. She became a beacon of hope and empowerment for young Africans chasing their dreams. And the world saw what she had always known. She had won far more than money. She had won respect, independence, and her life back. Amara's journey didn't end with her parents humbled or her story going viral. In fact, it was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where she focused on herself, her community, and the legacy she wanted to leave behind. She rebuilt her life on her own terms, learning to trust her instincts, celebrate her victories, and forgive herself for the years she had spent seeking approval from people who didn't deserve it. In Lagos, Amara became more than a successful entrepreneur. She became a mentor and a guide for young African women who dreamed of building their own futures. She hosted workshops, shared insights on financial literacy, and spoke openly about the importance of self-respect, perseverance, and ethical success. Women and aspiring entrepreneurs flocked to her sessions, inspired not just by her business achievements, but by her courage to rise above family betrayal and societal expectations. Her days were now filled with purpose and impact. She celebrated each success of her mentor as her own, knowing that the knowledge and confidence she imparted would ripple far beyond the walls of her office. Amara had learned that true wealth wasn't measured in money alone. It was in the lives she could touch and the independence she had claimed for herself. Looking back, she felt no longing for her parents' approval. Their opinions no longer held power over her. She owned her life, her empire, and her destiny. Every struggle, every sleepless night, and every small victory had led her to this moment of freedom and fulfillment. And as she stood overlooking the Lagos skyline from her office, a calm smile on her face, she whispered to herself, a quiet declaration of triumph. "They won the lottery, but I won my life."